everyone, I'm Sarrah Christensen with When Sages View Astrology, and I am doing another video on my Bridgerton series for the series season 3, the co-leads of Nicola Coughlan and Luke Newton. I'm focusing on Nicola's charts first, and I'm going to dive into Nicola's chart, her natal chart, with the planetary positions of the New York premiere on May 13th. Additional videos will be made for the actual release with Nicola's chart and Luke's chart, and then also the London premiere and the London part 2 release as well. I also plan some videos with the Netflix detail with Shonda maybe as a potential, and then I'm also going to do a video based on the imagery of the swans as it pertains to Aphrodite as a part of this Eros and Psyche and my passion for what's going on with Eros and Psyche right now. And I find it quite fascinating, and I keep pulling threads and it leads me in other rabbit holes. So I'm excited about it because it's my passion. And so I hope you enjoy what I'm sharing. And I really love your feedback and comments. It helps me make a better video. So I'm trying to keep my intro very short. Thank you for the feedback. So we're going to dive in. We're going to look at the planetary focus of Psyche, Eros, the angles, and all the things that the premiere at New York gave us in archetypal symbolism. So let's go. Okay, let's see here. I think I have another chart that kind of goes into the detail of, let me just move on from this slide. So we have covered a lot of Nicola, and I want to move on to another slide and see what we got next. Okay, so Nicola's chart, January 9th, 1987. You can see her is the inner circle in the green. The planets in the green are her natal chart, okay? And then outside, I have transits for the part 1 premiere, and this was 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time when that red carpet event took place. And I wanted to kind of keep, this is when she was in the haute couture, I don't know how to say that, that white, beautiful white gown she wore. And I think he had the red, and she had the red lipstick, passion. And he had the red jacket, stunning together. But let's see here. At the moment of the premiere, the Mercury by transit. So where's my Mercury? Mercury is down here in Aries. And this was May 13th. Yeah, May 13th. So 3 days before the release. So not a lot of people yet have seen it in the collective. It's, only those who've been to a premiere have seen some of it, right? And the Mercury was out of bounds. So this Mercury is a bit unhinged. So Mercury is responsible for, her 8th house, where Psyche is in her natal chart. So it's activating that. And Juno, another very important asteroid, is conjunct her vertex. Vertex is kind of like an angle. It's very important. It kind of activates something. Activating kind of partners. Marriage partner, that's about what? Juno is like that, but there's more meaning there than just that. But the lot of fortune is right on the Neptune as well. I thought that was pretty interesting because this is going to make it go wild about how big it's going to be. And that is also kind of pulling in her Saturn, because Saturn is responsible for what Capricorn does. And so next to a Uranus in her natal chart has the seed potential to make things quite big. Right? But here we have Pluto. You can see Pluto right here at the beginning of Aries, 2 degrees. It's retrograde at that point. And opposite, look at that moon in Leo, just going to light up all the audience. This thing is very visible, and the buzz is going to be huge. It is huge. Very significant. Moon in Leo wants to be seen, wants to be adored, but it has something that it has to share, and it will radiate. So, and then we have that moon in Leo of the audience, of others, of Nicola in the audience, Nicola and Luke, others, right? Significant. And so then it draws back to, reminding us of all the hard work she's done, and then how that it's going to be expanded. She's already been on part of the world tour at this, several spots at several countries by this time. And I think what I want to also point out is that Neptune is such an important planet for how it makes things blow up. That's a term from online. It's at the very last degree of Pisces. So it has a really it's just magnified. it just permeates the consciousness, right? The imagination and maybe even the escapism and how much we can feel captured by it, right? It's all in there. But here we are, we have Saturn in transit at 17 Pisces at the moment of that premiere in New York, part 1, on her Eros. And it's conjunct her Eros, conjunct her Jupiter, sits right in the middle of them, right? And then opposite Psyche. So Eros and Psyche, that whole arc, that whole opposition in her chart is huge. So it's like the commitment. Saturn is it can be committed, but it's also Saturn in Pisces is like the shape that the thing takes for the water, for the consciousness. Right? So it's like, I don't know where I heard that. I think it was Bruce Lee. He says like, the glass is the shape that the water takes. So something like that. But I think what's important here is like, this is the fruition of hard work and it's being shared with the world and, but it's amplified. And it also is accentuating Nicola's mutable square. Right? So that's huge because that is like spiritual growth, that's awakening, it's all these things. And because she has such a strong Jupiter in Pisces, it is magnified magnificently. So Psyche by transit, where's Psyche? Psyche has made it all the way around a couple of times to get to this point at 16 degrees of Aquarius. There's that 16 again. So the premiere for part 1, season 3, Bridgerton, Psyche is at 16 degrees of Aquarius. So there's to me the repeat of 16. She's very close to Amore in Nicola's chart. It's like amplifying love, the story of love to be in love, romance. But it's Psyche that is like the human experience of that kind of love. And the Greeks had different names for love, but Psyche has a significant role in the role with human experience. And it's almost like this is a liftoff of another archetypal kind of seeding being experienced, being brought forward for people. Maybe it's time because we went through the pandemic and how we felt and what we have been trying to understand about ourselves, and where's the love and the romance and the imagination of that and where it takes us and our experience with it. This is an interesting moment with Psyche and how it is also trying to herself note. So something in the way that she displays her relationships or what she's bringing through her travels. And that's definitely part of that tour. So the tour was really, the promo tour is probably got just as many streams as the actual show. And how many people have been watching what they do and how they act when they're in close proximity to each other, and even when they're separate, because it's kind of can still see happening, but definitely when they're in close proximity. So I think it's valuable to kind of take a look at the event. The event also had a rising sign of Libra relationship and the arts. And Libra is also, I know that for Nicola, she brought in all of the promo, that little, her little, oh gosh, it's for Gaza. She was in support of Gaza. And so she was doing her social activism in a small way she could because she had so many eyes on her. That's also Libra. And also I thought it was interesting that in that transit moment, the Pallas asteroid was right on, and Pallas is like a superwoman, like it's the strategist. It is thinking about those things and about how we act with the divine feminine from a strategic standpoint, from a wisdom standpoint, from how we are nation to nation. That's Sag, like borders and things like that. So that's interesting how that's embedded in this as well. And also embedded in this moment is Mars has recently made a Mars return in her chart. So when you have a Mars return, it's like you get a new, 26 months or something it is of Mars and how it's going to play out in your chart and how it activates certain things in your life. So this is a new period of Mars, which will infuse her career with new energy and how she articulates herself. She was really holding her own, doing so much on the promo tour. She was the queen in the moment, but with an very active player who was interesting and funny how they were together and how they played off each other, right? But she was definitely a fireball with her energy in there. I think it's also interesting to point out this conjunction of Uranus and the sun in the transiting moment. This to me is how the garden blooms so much and how the response was going to be, especially as you watched the first 4 episodes and got to the end of that first 4 episodes, and how that infused a whole conversation around that scene, the carriage, right? But what I think is interesting is the dynamic of the transiting sun. Venus is a conjunct her moon, the transiting Venus at 17 to, oops, I just moved that. So here is the Venus at 17 and the moon is at 16. So it's the Venus by transit has made a conjunction to her moon. So this is really in the feels for her around feeling beautiful and that just feeling loved and all of that. But there is also the dynamic of the Uranus, just the explosiveness of it. There's something breaking open within the seed of that moment as well about, that her home and things like that. So this to me is where else her travels took her in terms of going home, going to Galway, sharing her mother with her co-star, making that introduction, I think was right around there. I'll have to look at my notes on exact date for that, but this is in that moment, right? Like this is getting seeded in that moment. So it's like New York happened and then they went to Ireland, Dublin, Galway, and then back over to London, right? So that's getting seeded here. Right. So the introduction for home is going to happen for her and something's going to open up here. This is like Uranus and the Taurus with the sun at this place in her chart is kind of opening something related to her homeland too. Right. I don't think people understand that. There's something very, very significant about where she's from in our own collective consciousness and the beauty of it, what the nurturance of a Taurus moon nurtures people. They love food, right? But it goes beyond that. It's kind of like the soul is nurtured by the earth, and especially how she feels a part of the land, part of being Irish, and then we pick up on that collectively, and it does something with us as well about where we find that for ourselves. Where are we grounded in that beauty, that harmony, that place of Taurus? And yet there's something coming in that can be a little bit disruptive too, right? That's the Uranus. There's something very unique about that. And the Uranus and the sun are at 23 degrees, Venus at 17, and they are square the transiting Psyche. So it's kind of like this puzzle piece of tension, challenge, a place of growth, and things that manifest, right? When things manifest by an event. So that was a positive event for things to flourish and things like that in terms of her career, how she's connected to her home, and how much she brings her home out in the world and through her work and what she's in service to, right? Because that moon of hers is 6th house. And there in the transiting moment of that premiere in New York for part 1, she has the transiting Eros at 0 degrees of Cancer on the world, Aries point. Oh my gosh, right? Like that's so strong. And the moon is soul. The moon is Psyche, right? So it's like, it's so magnificent. And I hope that how I'm communicating this helps articulate how big this is. That's her service to the world. Oh, goodness. And we all pick it up and we're just enamored by it, right? It's just stunning. And then the midheaven of the moment. The midheaven is this heightened place in the chart. So the chart of the moment of that premiere at 5:30 p.m. start time Eastern Daylight Time on May 13th. It has it in Cancer as well. So it's highlighting moon. It's highlighting all of that. And the moon, transiting moon, us in Nicola's world, right? She's just a vehicle for us to open up to this because she has so many planets that are in their domain, meaning she's going to be able to realize things in her life. It's a soul that has wisdom and has been through many lifetimes to be able to bring this like this and to sign up for something like this at the soul level, right? There's that. Okay, what else? So the moon, and even in the show, there was one of the balls was about the moon. I think I have an image of that. That was the first image, the ball. That was the moon ball or something. Okay, what else do I want to share about this? Also, Nicola's nodal story. This is evolutionary astrology. This is the soul. In evolutionary astrology, we look at past life, coming and evolving, and we evolve towards the North Node. So this kind of, but the whole thing always is like activated together. My main teacher focuses that the South Node is kind of like where we go back to all the time because it's easy. It's harder to go to the North Node. We have to work to get to the North Node. But I think it depends on also the position of the ruling planet of that node. And in her chart, it actually shows that the Mars is in the sign of the North Node. So it'll be easier for her to achieve that just by doing it. Do it. And then her Venus is the ruler of the South Node that can speak to her gifts and her challenges from the past, right? Past life relationship, something with friendship, Venus in the 11th. These are also her gifts. Venus in the 11th house is like allies, so many allies around the world, friends around the world. I mean, it's very significant, right? But you kind of think like, what went wrong? South Node, why would the soul want to come back and like sign up for like, that's my chart, that's, coming in. That's what evolutionary astrology looks at. Now, traditional astrology is like you're born and you have your fate, your destiny. There's a combination of levels of how astrologers may look at that, right? I like to look at the whole thing, honestly, but because it's just a spiral of energy through space, time, and how things connect for us to experience. And some things are a lot more challenging than others, right? And we, in the belief of the evolutionary astrology, we're coming back. Get on. And at some point we might get to the point where like, I don't need to come back, right? So there could be that too. So there is a lot of a belief in astrology. All right. So you have to kind of figure out where you are. You can get in an evolutionary astrology reading to kind of examine the life that you've lived so far, but where is it kind of leaning towards? You got to look at kind of the spiral, but you have free will choices. Yes. But sometimes people think that your will has to take on the context of the archetypal energy that's offered up to you through the spiral of time. Right? So, okay. So South Node tells me for Nicola, and at this moment, she's in a nodal return. So there's something that, where's that Venus? Venus is kind of, it's almost highlighting the coming unexpected moment of something surprising. Yes. But it's the Libra energy talks about the past life, relationship, themes, and archetypes that she's working out to evolve them and make maybe a new evolved choice to give her a different kind of experience is lined up. She's in a nodal return. There is a storyline that is being presented for her to pull apart and look at the layers of the self and decide, what are you going to do this time? You've made these choices before in the past, and she can go back to her nodal returns, nodal oppositions, and such, or the square, when they're square to each other, to kind of get storylines to understand what is it that I'm trying to do slightly different than I've done in the past, or am I bringing in something significant, and I'm going to play it out through my art. Actors play out parts of their chart, so they are playing it through some role that they play, so it's not something that necessarily has to manifest in real life. It can manifest in a script and a storyline, right? That's the beauty of art. There's a truth in that. Okay, so having that nodal return, Mars being also reactivated into a new cycle just prior to this is activating. So she was probably receiving the exact moment of her nodal return when she was on tour before New York. Okay, which is huge. So there's something going on in her consciousness that's picking up on this and how she communicates, uses her Mars, uses her free will, and how she might experience certain conversations or how she expresses herself. And there's something cutting in there. That's Mars. Mars in Aries has a little bit of cut to it. Okay. And so that is dialed in, but she's learning to be more decisive. Like that's Mars also. Courage, be bold, go, say something, but you might feel like you missaid something too. Okay. And Venus is sitting at the 4th house by transit in Taurus. So she's in her domain. She's feeling the feels, feeling beautiful. And it's bringing in the storyline of the South Node. So, but it's behind the scenes, stuff in the 4th house you cannot see. So whatever it is, it's happening either. Now, here's the thing about having traveled south of the equator for part of the promo. She would have had an experience where the chart gets you still have the same angles, but it kind of gets flipped like that from a viewpoint. So that Taurus would have come up to the top of the chart, and the Scorpio would have been below, and the Taurus would have been more visible below the equator, which is fascinating. That Australia, for sure, and Brazil. These are two places in her promo. Their promo, Bridgerton 3, was really super dynamic, and there's a feeling within the fandom that watches them that there's something maybe happened in Brazil. But we also had a major eclipse and lunar eclipses before that in March, April timeline. And I think that period of time is actually very important, especially for Luke, but also Luke and Nicola and the other person, Antonia, in Luke's life. So what I think is interesting about Venus here is Venus was very visible, possibly to the world through the media that was shared, but also kind of the unexpected that could have taken place as it pertains to Taurus desires. Okay, so it's kind of giving, speak something directly. That's the Mars and Aries. Speak something directly. Your instincts are on. They're really on. Instincts are on. So the banter would have been just phenomenal. Probably a bit lovey or naughty or something. Just that would have been there because of the Venus in the Taurus. Food, absolutely. Taurus, and desire natures and things like that. Taurus. I think it was the Aries, the Mars, and but notice also in that third house the just this premiere in May. So the transiting Cupid also in Aries, so close to the node. So it's kind of like Cupid is like that lusty part, right? Because Eros was more like of a teenager adolescence, and then the Romans made Cupid a baby, like the little the cherub. And I think that kind of they did that to decrease its scariness of how intense the love can impact lives. If you look that one up, that's on some of the YouTubes. But what I think is fascinating about that is how tightly that is. So in the nodal return, which is a big cycle, it's a 18 years cycle to go all the way around and return to that spot. So here we are Nicola's having a nodal return, and this magnificent success is coming forward, and how she mastered through her work using the different voices for Penelope, right? But also what Nicola is embodying for Psyche. That's her mask to the world, because the transiting Psyche is in her first house. It is part of the mask. It's coming out, right? And then what she's in service to with Eros, transiting Eros in the 6th. What she's in service to. Wow. Okay, I have no idea how long this one is, but I am just going to keep recording to create something I hope you enjoy as a part of an exploration of astrology. Astrology is very complex, as you can see. What else do I want to point out? Oh, yes, one more thing. I want to point out also the Jupiter in the transiting moment of season 3's part 1 premiere, the red carpet moment, right? Jupiter is our planet for expansive, how things expand, get bigger, and are exaggerated in the world. Jupiter is always bound by Saturn for wherever Saturn is, but sometimes one has more strength in its ability to express than the other, depending on the sign that it's in, like if it's in its own domain, right? Or a domain that's not necessarily, maybe it's a more neutral domain, right? So a couple things. Saturn is in Pisces, a sign that it is completely contrary to. Saturn likes to bring things into form. In Pisces, it's doing it through the imagination, the collective imagination. It also, what was done in solitude. You can kind of see the mastery of what was done in solitude, right? The discipline it took to get there. And there's also the wisdom at the end of the zodiac like that. So, however, the Jupiter in Taurus at the transiting moment of that season 3 premiere in New York, part 1, has Jupiter at 27 degrees with the vertex also at 27 degrees on her lot of fortune. So I would think that she will have the opportunity to be making some significant contacts, but also the desire to feel beautiful. Well, it's kind of like the expression of her beauty, the Taurus beauty. She might have the excitement because Uranus is in there just stirring that up a bit. Feels a little bit chaotic, and I think that we also saw that Luke leaned into Nicola, maybe for his anxiety, to lean on her knowledge of being in such big enthusiasm and energy. That would have been a huge amount of energy for anyone. But imagine if you had anxiety, how much more that would have been challenging to navigate. It's because that Uranus is so close to the sun, what's being highlighted through that moon. So it's just like magnified. But the Jupiter expanding, so much energy is going through these big points, the planetary archetypes. So it plays out dynamically like that. And so the lot of fortune is just telling me how strong that is, even more so. So it's just another explanation of, an exclamation point. I also know that we'll see it in Luke's chart that whole stellium of Taurus is opposite his Psyche and his Pluto in Scorpio. So that would have been a magnifier for him. Okay. Also, the Eros in Cancer for Nicola is what she's in service to. So it's like almost like sixth house is also kind of collective. So if seventh house is others, so herself is first house, seventh house is others. It's the others. So the audience, unconscious, need to be taken care of, feel secure, feel safe. Little bit of how secure can you find yourself? How do you get yourself to be secure enough to be vulnerable? That's what's sitting in this moment. So powerful. And Eros is just pointing the arrow right at us, right in our collective unconscious through Nicola as a vehicle. Oh, okay. I think that's where I'm going to end it for this portion. And I'm probably going to have to splice all these up and make them into little videos. So I'll just turn it into a playlist or something because they're kind of long. But I definitely think it's important to point these things out because we can kind of get a sense of not only the actor, but the actor being a vehicle for us collectively to engage beyond the script in something that is evolving us, that we can't even understand how it's evolving us, honestly, but it is. We feel enchanted by it. We feel, we're just drawn to this storyline. Lots of people are drawn to this storyline. Now, some people easily cut and go, but I think those whose charts, mine included, are magnified by these actors, you can feel like, oh my gosh, how do I unhitch from this thing, right? So that's all in here as well. And yeah, okay, that's all I'm going to do for this one. And we'll go from there. I think the next one will be the release. So I'm going to end this one and then do that, the actual release date on May 16th. See you in the next video.